Let me show you a little tool that I've got. This is a wire wrapping tool. I got it off the internet at an electronics store online. Very, very useful little tool, especially when you're working with the magnet wire. It just makes it so much easier to secure the wire and then soldering it onto your LEDs. Here's my 5mm flickering whites. Let me show you how this works. If I can get resistors out. Pull two resistors here. With the resistors and the circuitry and all of that, plenty of YouTube videos online about how to do all of that work. Trying to make your own and do all that, but for the most part, for doing your lighting and the models, just go with what like HDA with their kits put together for their lights. You can just go with what they've got, and you don't have to do any calculations or figuring anything out. Very simple, very straightforward, and you won't really run the risk of harming yourself or anyone else or burning your model out. So taking your LED here, put your resistor on the longer leg here. I'll slide it up a little bit so I get maximum coverage. One of the problems with the resistors and soldering is if you don't get the solder on there well, you'll end up breaking your resistor off and then having to go back and do the whole thing again because it's just very delicate. So make sure you get a good slop of solder on there to hold it, so that it's not just precariously hanging on there at the end and susceptible to breaking. But now let me show you this wrapping tool and what it can do. I use the green for my ground, so I'm going to wrap the wire onto the ground here. One thing I do, because the insulation on the green is a little thicker than on the red, and if you just heat it up, you can see the smoke. That'll take the insulation off a lot easier than just the solder will trying to go directly onto it. This just makes a cleaner connection, and I recommend you do that just so you don't have any issues later. So you feed the wire into the wrapping tool, okay, and then there's two holes on the wrapping tool, and it wraps the wire onto the LED. Now if you're not going anywhere with that, if you're securing in place, that's really all you would need to do, but it's always just a better idea to solder it. Actually, I'm going to put an extra loop here just to keep it, because you don't want it to somehow, either in installing it or working with it or whatever, you don't want it to come off. And the few seconds that you spend soldering it on is just years of not having to worry about whether or not that connection is going to hold. Okay, so now we've got that. Now with our power, again taking the tool, hopefully you can see that all right, feed it into the tool, And you just turn it and it just wraps it around where you need it. And now with the red, it's a lot thinner and the insulation comes straight off when you heat it up. Solder this on there too, just so you never have to worry about it. Okay. And now, since I'm going to go just right here, I don't need a lot of wire, so I'm going to just snip it about right there. And now I have an even amount of wire to go. And I'm also going to snip off the extra length here on the resistor because I don't need that. Now, one last step I recommend you do is this insulation tubing that you can get, that you can just heat up, and it forms a nice seal so that you don't get a short between the two connections. So you just slide it on. Okay. And then using a heat gun, not a hair dryer, but a heat gun. You can also use a lighter that'll do the same thing, but I don't smoke, so I don't really have any lighters hanging around. But getting one of these heat guns, nice little thing to have right there, and there you go. You've got a done deal with your light. Now let me heat up the ends here and burn off the insulation, and we'll test it out. Okay. And it takes a little longer on the green, a little thicker insulation. Turn on my power source here. Now, if we've got everything right, it should just light up. Okay, and you can see that flickering effect that this one has, and that slight little pulsating effect from these flicker lights that'll give that very dynamic pulsing sense to the nacelle dome that really just makes your model pop just that much more. So there's a quick little thing for doing your lighting. Again, don't be afraid to try this out. I didn't know how to do this until a few years ago when I just watched a couple of videos on YouTube about how to do it. Incredibly easy. Incredibly easy. All right.